Cold open question of the day for Monday, May 27th, Brendon Kleen. Before we get to playoff teams and Paul George and Mike Brown and all kinds of stuff, we're going to go to the bottom barrel of the league, to a team that I think you and I have a little bit of a soft spot for a second. The Detroit Pistons. We didn't talk about this last week, but they hired a new president of basketball operations in Trajan Langdon. So if you're his consultant, if you're McKinsey and you get hired to consult him and tell him he gets to do whatever he wants, first order of operations, what's the first thing you're doing if you're running the Detroit Pistons right now?
My favorite, or my preferred way, if I'm a bad team, like bleak bad, not just down year bad, and I have cap space and I have a blank slate of a roster, I'm running things the way the Jazz and the Thunder have the past few years. I'm saying, hey, Phoenix with Yusuf Nurkic, or hey, Brooklyn with Ben Simmons, or whatever. We'll take your guy and buy him out and just sort of send him home, but theoretically have him on our team. And yeah, we'll take your first round pick for that, and we'll take a couple seconds here and a couple of this over there, and we'll maybe trade our Isaiah Stewart. And like, I'm blowing this up. I know that's not what they will do, probably, because this past year was already so ugly. Choosing to go lower than that would be a crazy thing to do and a tough sell, but that's what I would do much faster than I would sign Tobias Harris or do anything goofy like that just to get 2-3 more wins. Like they're not close to contention, so I'm going the other direction.
We're in agreement. My first thing is saying don't pay Tobias Harris a dime. You don't need him. Go fill it. Yes, I understand there's probably some weirdness you're feeling with the Cade Cunningham timeline, whatever, as much as that can exist right now, because he's rookie extension eligible already. And you're like, okay, we have to pay him. Like, what does that mean? I understand you probably feel like you're in a weird place as an organization. You kind of just got to take that and take it on the chin, pay him. Yeah. And try to set him up for success in 2 years, in 3 years, and do what you
also
said.
Look, with Cade, it's like with any of these guys, I understand, I'm not trying to be flippant about it, but let him ask for a trade. We're not exactly talking about Kareem Abdul-Jabbar here. If he's, if a guy at that caliber is going to demand a trade and take the PR hit and cause a scene with having accomplished so little and having injury concerns and all this stuff, then okay, we'll try for Cooper Flagg. But it's Cade Cunningham. We're not, holding up the progress of our organization just to keep that dude happy. Make an all-star team,
The second 1A to this is I'm at least having a meeting, Brendan, and just wondering, I'm looking at the Jazz with Will Hardy. I'm looking at the Thunder with Mark Daigneault. Is Monty Williams that guy for us? And should I just try to take his salary as a tax write-off at this point? I think I might.
Like the Batwoman movie?
Yeah. And
Monty Williams is the Batwoman of the Detroit Pistons.
Yeah. What's the other one that Zaz just wrote off?
There were a few. There were a handful. But yeah, look, it's with Monty. They already are rumored
inside the NBA,
to have given. Yeah. Well, another story. But look, they've given him apparently Trajan Langdon the green light to fire Monty if he believes that's what the right thing to do is. Now, judging from their track record and their weird leadership hierarchy, from giving Stan Van Gundy all the power in the world and all the different things they've tried here, do I trust that ownership and even this brain trust now with Langdon at the top of it is going to find the right next Will Hardy or Mark Daigneault? I don't know. But I would feel a lot better about just the state of things, playing a style that's a little more maybe modern and maybe a guy who can relate to those players a little better if it was a 35-year-old hotshot than Monty Williams on his third team.
I agree. Monty Williams and John Beilein can have an old guy's consultant.
Monty's not even that old, which is funny. He's in his 50s. It's not exactly like some, geezer.
No, just time comes and waits for no man. All right, on today's show, we've got 2 conference final series that are 3-0. How did we get here? We're going to talk about them both, plus the Kings and Mike Brown at an impasse, And what should Paul George do? What is best for him this summer? That's all coming up today on the Just Basketball, a Just Sports podcast.
Oh, a spectacular move by Michael Jordan. LeBron James with no regard for human life.
What is up, everyone? I am Chris Manning. That is Brendon Kleen. If you have not already, you can follow, rate, review on your podcast app platform of choice. That is 5-star reviews only. You can hit subscribe on the Just Basketball Fans, a YouTube channel, and you can check us on a TikTok, Instagram, and X. Gotta also tell you about our friends over at BetMGM. We're powered by BetMGM, our official betting partner. And Brendon, gotta tell you, before I give us the ad read about BetMGM, watching the title odds shift over BetMGM the last couple days has been a real
roller
treat.
coaster.
Just a real wild, a real swerve all over the place. From Boston obviously a favorite, but like it was pretty even with the Wolves and the Mavs, and it's just continually just.
I mean, just go back to Game 7 with Denver, Minnesota. I would imagine Denver had the second best odds to win the championship. That was like a week ago. They're not even playing basketball anymore.
It's if someone got in on like Mavs and like Luka Finals MVP at like long odds, they're probably very excited right now. But today's episode is brought to you by BetMGM. If you haven't signed up for BetMGM yet, use bonus code JUSTBasketball and you'll get up to a $1,500 first bet offer on your first wager with BetMGM. Here's how it works. Step 1, download the BetMGM Sportsbook app on iOS or Android and sign up using code JUSTBasketball. Step 2, you deposit at least $10 and place your first wager on any game. Step 3, you receive up to $1,500 back in bonus bets if the bet loses. You just make sure you use our code JUSTBasketball when you sign up. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Must be 21 or older to wager. Terms and conditions apply. We'll be doing some content over on TikTok and Instagram as well with NBA and WNBA odds from BetMGM, so be sure to check us out over there. Brendon, let's get into the game we just watched, the Western Conference Finals, Game 3, and the Dallas Mavericks up 3-0. I mean, my goodness, I did not think we'd be here. We both favored the Wolves coming into the series. I thought this series was going to be competitive. I think it's had real moments of competition and close. This game was awesome and close and back and forth. The Wolves led in the fourth quarter of this game, but Dallas is up there in control. In all likelihood, barring something historic, they're going to the NBA Finals. Like, I did not think we'd be here this soon in terms of this series feeling at this point already.
No, I didn't either, and Luka is 1A of the reason why. I think we all knew heading into this series that Dort was probably a better matchup physically versus Luka than anybody Minnesota had, and that was sort of in the back of your mind, but I don't think anybody expected him to slice up the best defense in the NBA, who just shut down, at times at least, enough times to win the series, a Denver Nuggets offense that most of us think, at least execution-wise, is the best in the league. For Luka to do this, it blows away anything you would have ever guessed. And in this game, Chris, he didn't take a single shot at the rim the whole game. Shot chart, the closest shot he took was right outside the restricted area, and he missed it. He only made 3 shots in the paint. So this was, and they were like on the outskirts, might have had a foot on the line. This was difficult. This was like tough shot making 101. This was earned. And so you can say, he's solving Minnesota or whatever. I think he's just sort of beating good defense in a way that the past 2 teams that the Timberwolves really squelched out just weren't able to. Like with Luka, I was watching this game feeling like we talk about, even with Minnesota at times, how they dictate a great defense, right? Dictates what the offense has to do. Like every coach, every player in the NBA, you hear them all talk long enough. We got to give them different looks and we got to mix it up and we can't make it easy. That's all these things they always say. it feels like Luka is the one giving a defense different looks. Like he's just a chess master. Oh, let me try this little series of moves, this tactic, this okay, and that worked too. And then I'll try this other thing in a few minutes, and I don't think he can be solved or stopped. And the ability to do it as a wing and a guard is what I think it's the difference from Jokic, where you don't have to enter the ball to somebody. You don't have to get interior position. Luka can do it from anywhere, and he's been doing it all series now.
And he has like 5% more of like the FU, I'm going to just put it in the basket, like willingness that Jokic wants to do the cool over-the-shoulder pass. Like that's part of the beauty of Jokic. It's why we love him. But Luka's willing to take a little more willing to take the awkward one-legged like fadeaway to make it absurd. Yeah.
The mentality, it's like he will do what Jokic did in Game 5 of that series every night.
Yes, exactly. Right? Exactly.
Yeah.
He'll do it, and then he'll the one thing they have in common, and Luka probably does this even more, is that he will. I mean, all time, like great Luka playoff game. Also, all time, like makes great shot, bitches at the ref game from Luka. Incredible.
I liked how many times Jason Kidd just kind of picked him up and threw him down to defend in transition. Like 2 or 3 separate times. Luka goes cascading into the bench, and Jason Kidd's like, "Get your ass back there. I don't care. Like, get up.
Please just move, Luka. Like you gotta get moving." It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
And you pair him with Kyrie, and they have 2 of the 5 best tough shot makers in the NBA, like on the same team, and they're both geniuses at improvisation. Like this Mavs offense, I think, has the Wolves defense and fits in a large part because they are like relocating all over the place. Sometimes they don't really. The Wolves defense doesn't feel like it knows what to expect. It is not just like high pick and roll, slip screen, like big man rolls, gets to the rim. It's like it could be a bunch of things. When it's Kyrie, it's like he's whipping around, relocating to the corner, and is doing that. And he's doing a ton off ball in a way that he wasn't maybe early in his career.
It is what you said. It's just after that they keep churning, right?
Yeah.
Like it is simple at the beginning, but then there's more, and you can't really ever relax. Yeah.
They layer and they layer and they layer and they layer, and it's like, wow, it has them in fits because they just can't beat some of these actions. Then you get the switches. And they're trying different stuff. Like, to the Wolves' credit, they tried the zone. They're trying the blitzes. And Dallas is seeing that. They see it 3 or 4 times. Luka sees it. Kyrie sees it. They figure it out. And Luka's just seeing everything. And he's like, yeah, I get to my spot. I'm going to hit my shot. I'm going to hit the pull-ups. He also physically, Brendan, looks like he is starting to feel like a little bit better, which would be scary to me as we look forward a little bit with them. That, like, to me, he looked like
getting the job done next game would help that too, for sure.
Exactly, but compared to like the start of Game 2 to now, maybe just like cooking Gobert and then like screaming, "You can't effing guard me" with the fury of 10,000 suns at Gobert, like gave him some healing powers at the end of Game 2. But the way he looked at the start of this game and throughout this game versus Game 2, even, I think he looks better now. And you're seeing just the way he's playing, even just without needing to get to the rim. And maybe there is just some of that of, like, even his willingness, to your point about not getting to the rim. Maybe there's something about his willingness to stop on a dime and plant his feet and rely on the footwork and trust his ability just to get to a spot and pull up that speaks to how good he seems to feel right now.
I would say so. I mean, yeah, and like that not getting to the rim point, it's like it's not like he's Zion. Normally,
no.
He this is how he plays, but it just was so stark to literally have not even a single attempt there this time. But yeah, the blitzes and Gobert are exactly what I was thinking of when I was saying that he is dictating so much here. Minnesota came right out with the blitzes, and I think to Dallas's credit, both Kyrie and Luka, but also the coaching staff to get the team ready for that. It felt like they knew it was coming. Like they literally had a crystal ball in the locker room before the game, and it didn't even catch him off guard for one single possession. But he starts out by getting the drop pass to Gafford, to Lively, whatever. Then about halfway through the quarter, he starts breaking it himself crossover. I mean, he honestly put his Kyrie mask on a little bit and started just getting through the middle of those blitzes with his handle and with his physicality. He gets Rudy to foul him like all the way near half court. Rudy's first foul was 4:04 in that first quarter, and I only wrote his first foul down, which normally I would never make a note of a player's first foul, but it just felt like already frustration. Like I'm just smacking you because our chess move with these blitzes it's over already. So then, like you said, they go to the zone and they do all the other things. But I tweeted this. We posted it on our Instagram. He now has a .524 winning percentage on the road in the NBA playoffs. It would be better if we included the bubble, but that's not really fair because nobody was home or road there, or everybody was road, I guess. And then heading into tonight, 31, 9, and 8 per game in the playoffs for his career, 37% usage, 57% true shooting, and he's on his way to his second conference finals, and he's in his mid-20s. Has an awesome chance to win a championship. This is... we spent so much time with Jokic, like we kind of have to start treating this dude fairly similarly. He doesn't have the MVP trophies, but it's kind of hard to ignore right now.
Luka Doncic is impossible to ignore with what he's doing. And I don't want to go too far forward because we're going to do like finals previews and things, Brendan, but I just like watch these games and I've watched him these playoffs, and you watch him anytime. I just other teams, other players, I think Ant might have been in this case, and I want to talk about him a little bit coming out of this game, just because I think the Wolves did some things to try to get his engine revved up, and I for a second thought his engine got revved up enough with that dunk that he had that they were going to do this and make this a 2-1 series. But I think he's going to look at what he's going to see next round, and if there's any player I don't think is going to be fazed by the waves of size he's going to see, I don't think it's going to bother him one bit. I really, really don't. And I don't think the guard size Kyrie's going to see, it's going to affect Kyrie more than it's going to affect Luka. But I don't think those guys are going to get bothered by that.
Boston doesn't really have anybody any better than Jaden McDaniels to guard Luka, right? I mean,
no.
Kyrie-wise, I wanted to point out one stretch, though, because fourth quarter, he comes out. The Mavs won this game by 9. They were tied heading into the fourth quarter. They went down. I think the first bucket might have been scored by Minnesota. Kyrie's on the court. Luka's off. And Kyrie turns the ball over, just kind of
stepped off the side. Yep.
Yeah, and then comes right back and hits a pull-up 3 in transition next possession to tie it back at 92. And those moments to me are where Kyrie's value has been so obvious for this team. It's just... And he says it every chance he gets, I'm the one who's been here before. And he's not saying it in a cocky way. He's saying it in a real way, the truth. And the ability to, he's not... There's a reason he has to be on a team with LeBron or Luka or Kevin Durant to have reached his highest heights. There's nothing wrong with that. And his ability to just be comfortable, even when it is just him, has been immense. I mean, he had the same amount of points as Luka tonight. We definitely can't overlook him. And he's brought it. Defense, offense, shooting, playmaking, whatever. It's definitely a two-headed monster. But yeah, it simplifies everything else, and it allows you to have guys on the court that you wouldn't otherwise, because those two can create so much. And that's how you get a defense that's built this way, and you get the depth that they have. Is those guys can shoulder so much for you on the offensive end that you can get a little creative 3 through 8.
The Wolves side, I thought taking Anthony Edwards and doing 2 things with him set him up to have more energy later. I mean, everyone in the world saw him dragging in game 2. He talked about it. He was pretty intentional about his wanting to come out and go super hard in this game. I think to some degree he did. 26-9 and 9 for him. Pretty good game. Had 8 in a row at one point. But they took him off as being Kyrie's primary defender, which I think was the right move. I didn't feel like that super compromised their defense, if I'm being honest. I thought it just made some sense. Certainly created some issues to have Conley over there.
A little bit too.
Yeah. But I didn't think that switch created a ton of issues, and I think not having him bring up the ball every time did save him some energy. But ultimately, I mean, this came back to Towns was 5 of 18, 0 of 8 from 3. Just kind of an off Karl night. They never looked super settled. They've been really good at, I think, making Karl uncomfortable behind the arc. We're trying to run him off the line, contesting his space. And obviously very little from Gobert in the series in general. This is just a bad Gobert series. He's not giving you anything on offense. Like it felt like the found money in this game, Brendan, was like the Jaden McDaniels little spurts that he was giving you, and the Naz Reid burst when he had 14, and you didn't get enough from Karl, didn't get enough from their guys, and even with how I thought they managed Ant really well, just the offense never really quite got to the level where they could match them with the upper echelon Dallas firepower we were talking about.
Yeah, I mean, look, I thought it might be a Conley night. He had the first 5 points of the game for them, and then he goes to the locker room later in the first quarter, and maybe just, I don't know, maybe it is physical, or it's just the fact that he's how old he is, and he's not going to have 20, 30-point nights anymore. But also might be a just bad luck charm. If he's about to get swept in the conference finals again, like a decade after the first time, that's brutal for Mr. Conley.
Man, I didn't even think about that. That's tough. That's
tough. But so Rudy, I think it is a bad series, mostly because the way that Dallas just takes up space with their defense. Denver chooses to open up the middle of the floor, and then they're going to just trust themselves to kind of recover from that. And so Rudy had these lanes to the basket where he looked pretty decent at times. The Suns kind of guarded the Timberwolves the same way. So for 2 rounds, Gobert looked like as good on offense as he has ever. But in this one, the paint is walled off most of the time. So he's just, that chair, pulling the chair that Luka did on him, and he just has had some brutal, ugly moments. But yeah, I mean, to me, the Dallas defense is a huge story, and the Lively injury, and if that defense can continue to hit its ceiling beyond this game, depending on how much time he has to miss, is an open question. But we all made fun of Jason Kidd all those years ago when he was trying to, be a defense that didn't give anything. We all think NBA defense is about choosing what you're giving your opponent. He's always said, I disagree with the premise. Kind of feels like this is nirvana for Jason Kidd's defense. They just take up so much space. They're so confident. They're like 2 straight rounds now, 3 really. The whole playoffs, they basically have said, we don't care about any of the opposing team's shooters. Unless it's a star player, we're not even treating them like they matter. We're going to play off of them and dare those guys to make shots. It's worked. Their defense somehow feels like the more intense, dominant unit, despite what we've just seen Minnesota do for the past 2 rounds and a whole regular season before that. It's crazy. They're a team full of 16-game guys, I guess, is the best explanation for it.
Everything about them has just been, from round 1, past that with flying colors, round 2, past that with the flying colors, and this, they're dominating. I mean, they're up 3-0. Like, yes, it's going to go down as like a close series, but like they're dominating in crunch time. They're dominating in the big moments. They're the ones making the tough shots. Dallas has been, like, if you want, Dallas like epitomizes to me, Brendan, like what a playoff team feels like this year, I think, is the way I think I would put it. Based on what you said, based on what we're talking about, based on how they've performed. Like, yes, like Boston has been the most dominant in terms of like record, but Dallas feels like the team. It would have been the Wolves, but it feels like Dallas has kind of snatched like that energy from the Wolves at this point. Like they've taken that from them based on this 3-0 lead. Like Dallas has been the team that has gone through what you're supposed to go through in the playoffs for, that has passed the test that you're supposed to see in the playoffs. Like that is what this has felt like over and over again.
Yeah, I think the only, now is Lively neck sprain. That looked like it hurt like hell. Get knee in the back of the head, full swinging motion, full force.
After
the dude as big as Cat.
After Karl almost like ended his chances of continuing his bloodline. Like,
yeah, but rough. He only had 9 minutes. He got beat. But so Mavs this year, this postseason, plus 17 net rating with Dereck Lively on the court, -7 off. That is like doesn't even feel real as far as an on-off stat would go. But they're gonna need him. Gav's not as mobile, doesn't have as much touch, doesn't have as much passing. Any of those short roll plays, Gafford's a turnover risk, not much better than there, frankly. And I look around the rim, it feels like they have like 6 inches different in wingspan. I know they don't, but it's a noticeable couple of inches difference in height, in wingspan, and everything. And the rim protection is just a touch worse. So Gafford's the starter. I think we all know Lively's the better guy, and they're really going to need him to be healthy if they're going to get to the finals and try to win this championship.
He hasn't missed a shot in this Western Conference Finals.
Yeah.
It's absurd for a rookie. For anybody, but like a rookie.
He's been their third most valuable player even during the regular season. Like from day one, he was 19, looking like a 5-year vet. So I guess it shouldn't surprise us, but the fact that he's continued it when it's supposed to get tougher, and you have, even like a Jaden McDaniels who's not even a rookie, and that tentativeness, and like that's what it's supposed to look like. Lively just feels like he's grabbed this whole thing and made the most of it. So they need him for sure.
I think I'm going to spend part of my Memorial Day, Brendan, looking at Oklahoma City Thunder subreddit and like finding like if people are mad at Sam Presti for like allowing the Mavericks to get Dereck Lively. Like just wondering. Because I think
I'd say they probably are. Probably are.
I'd be pretty. I think I'd be a little pissed. All right, let's get to the Eastern Conference Finals, which is also 3-0. Maybe a little more predictable, particularly with the Tyrese Halliburton hamstring issue. Let's talk about Jrue Holiday first, Brendan, because he was the guy who sealed this game for Boston. And when they went and got him this summer, they were the team, not Miami, not the Lakers, not the Clippers, not like whomever could have went and traded for him after he is in Portland and after the Dame trade. It's Boston, and they've obviously already signed him to an extension. They got him for stuff like this. When he was with Milwaukee at the peak of those Bucks, when they won the title, to me he was the second most important guy in those teams. Here he is the fifth most important guy, maybe the sixth. He is not there. He is there to be additive to the core. He is there to give this team overwhelming depth. He is there to be the best version of what he is at this age and within the confines of the structure of that team, and to be maximized in like a really rare way for an NBA team considering salary cap and all of that stuff. It speaks to how all in Boston is that they were willing to do this in general, but it allows Holiday to just be a very specific thing. He's had like a very up and down playoffs. He hasn't been overwhelming, by any stretch of the imagination. But he sealed this game. He made one of the most Jrue Holiday plays you'll ever see by getting a steal. Just physicality, timing, length, everything that makes Jrue Holiday one of the best perimeter defenders of this generation is on display in this moment to seal a game that Boston had by no means, they did deserve to really win that game. They're down most of this game. Their intensity wasn't really there for much of it. Indiana came out really hot, looking to get Game 3 at home. And Jrue Holiday caps off that Boston win by making just a quintessential Jrue Holiday play. Just want to give him some flowers before we, I think, kind of talk about Indiana a little bit more.
Yeah, I mean, with Holiday, look, I think what he isn't and what he's okay not being has been the most attention he's gotten, the most praise he's gotten, just the sacrifice. But I would even take a step further than just saying, oh, he sacrificed. I mean, he always has. He's never been some huge usage guy. And I hate to, take a kind of roundabout shot at another player while praising somebody, but he's not Marcus Smart in the best ways. You know what I mean? And he doesn't hijack things and play outside of himself the way that Smart, for better and worse, and it's a great quality to have. I'm sure Memphis, when they finally get healthy next year, is going to appreciate having that. But for Holiday to just be content to be a specialist and be like probably the most versatile, most multifaceted in terms of not only his skill set, but how he's utilized by his coaching staff, defender in the whole NBA, non-big man division. I mean, Vic is that, but Holiday doing it at 6'4" is crazy. And he just, okay, yeah, I'll make the biggest play of the game late and have like 14 and 3 and 4 of 10 from the field, not shoot much, be the, like you said, fifth guy in terms of shot attempts. Great. No problem. So yeah, definitely. He always shows up in the postseason, always has, even in that New Orleans sweep of Portland all those years ago. He's always kind of done that. But yeah, I just Pacers wise, Andrew Nembhard is awesome. I mean, I don't know how deep we have to get with it. He stepped up and basically played point guard for this team and almost stole a road conference finals game against the best team in the NBA by just running pick and roll and basically doing his best Tyrese Halliburton impression, frankly, and ends up with 32 and 9, only 2 turnovers, 50+% from the field. Like, he showed up, and he's really, really, really good.
what I like at Brendan about their guys, the longer we've gone on in this postseason with them, and by comparison, I want to say like to Cleveland's, let's say, who like there are a lot of Cleveland's role guys like Niang, Okoro. Some of this I think is coaching and player development. I don't think this is all just on the player. I think it's an organizational thing at times, and so maybe it's your star players as well to some degree. I think there's a whole way you could look at this. But Cleveland's role guys have often felt kind of one note, kind of they do one thing and they don't really give you much else. They don't like additive. And I think we've seen it over the last couple of years in the NBA. Your role guys need to be multiple. We don't have like specialists anymore. We don't have like Kyle Korver anymore. We don't have like Tony Allen's anymore. Those guys don't exist, right? Indiana's rotation, whether it's TJ McConnell, who's like doing the most right now, whether it's Nembhard, who is showing you that he has more to his game, and I think you could see him continue to evolve beyond this year when Halliburton's back next year and healthy, whether it's Aaron Nesmith. Siakam, I think, he adds to this. Siakam has elements to this. He's a little more defined, I think, in what he is, but he adds to this. I think it's the idea of drafting a Jarris Walker, as maybe someone who is going to take Obi Toppin's minutes a year from now. It's why, like, maybe trading Buddy Hield in retrospect wasn't that big of a deal because he's a one-note guy in a lot of ways. And it's like, okay, you don't actually miss him. Our identity makes a lot of sense here with the way we're playing. They're guys, and the way they've decided to play, they all can do a couple different things. They all know where to be defensively, it feels like. They all can shoot. A lot of the guys can dribble a little bit. Like they have these multiple skills that I think are adding to the identity of the team. Over the course of the year, this Pacers team has evolved. For them to make the conference finals is a really big deal. It's going to end here. They're not going to make the finals.
Fake.
Obviously.
I mean, we don't have to kiss their ass.
It's cool.
They shouldn't be
fake.
here.
Okay, but it's still cool for them. I just want to say it's cool. But like.
Of course. They won the games in front of them. I'm like, you can't take it away, but it's not like, wow, and they've built into a conference finals team. It's like, no.
For sure. No, for sure. They beat a Knicks team that we loved, but was like beat to shit and like had some real issues at the end. And there's questions here, right? Like, what Benedict Mathurin is in this context is like a huge question going forward. Like how you build out this roster going forward is like a real question. But for what they are right now and what I think you got out of Nembhard and I think just what they kind of seem to be identifying and some of the role guys, like I just like what they are. Even if, look, do I think they're going to do, would I be like, yes, they can repeat this next year and I think they're going to make the conference finals again? I would probably guess that I'm not going to think they're going to make the conference finals again next year would be my guess. Way too early predictions. Like I'd be looking at like Philly or a bunch of other teams next year, whoever. But I just
their future to me is what's interesting because I mean, even just start with the very basic fact that the two guys who stepped up most in this game and two of their most heroic players throughout the postseason. When you go to the game 3 game winner by Nembhard in the last round and TJ McConnell, it feels like every night they both play the same position as their best player. So. I think clearly one of those guys could have a lot of value to get moved this summer. I would say, Shepherd, Jarris Walker, those guys are both interesting. Toppin, you mentioned, I believe he's eligible for a contract in restricted free agency this summer. What do they do there? So they're still flexible, and that's always been, their lead exec, Buchanan, he doesn't get a lot of attention. I don't think a lot of people know his name, but he built the Brandon Roy Blazers. He's building this team, and he's every step of the way been very open about the fact that type of flexibility never full, and of course being in a small market twice, I'm sure reinforces that in your head, but like he's never emptying the powder completely. He's never going to get rid of every last asset to go fully in one direction or that direction, probably because in both cities he couldn't tank, but he also wasn't going to get a superstar in free agency. And okay, those are the set of guidelines, but still to pull it off and be this successful, frankly, this fast with Halliburton too, is really, really impressive. So I think it might not be real. It might not be, something that you think, okay, and then next year they should be shooting for a championship. Like, I don't think any of us are going to have those expectations, but they've been competitive in this series. And I think that's pretty real, even though Boston likes to F around. Boston's the best team in the conference. There's only so many ifs, ands, and buts you can put in front of the Pacers, and before you do, just kind of say, okay, well, they're still doing it. And they very easily could have stolen a game in this series. I mean, 2 of them were right there for them to take. they're a really good team, and they're definitely hard. I mean, I think the versatility point you made is the right one. I would say that's mostly on the offensive end. I think they do still have a lot to figure out on the defensive end. They're a very small team. I just think their unpredictability on offense makes them unpredictable. It makes them very difficult to scheme and game plan against. Like, there was a shot in the first half of game 3 that Obi Toppin took like a pull-up 2.
Yeah.
It's like it's just they're funky, but in a good way.
Which is interesting for a Carlisle team, because that was like not the thing with him for like the longest time of him as a head coach, and he's ended up here, which is kind of fun. Like, everyone can evolve to some degree. You just got to pay attention and watch as it goes. Curious to see what happens with this roster in the summer. Last thing on this series, no Porzingis for Game 4. It had been kind of talked about by Woj and others that Game 4 had been the earliest he could return. It's already been ruled out. So, Brennan, I ask you this. Let's just say Boston... Well, right. But let's just say they win Game 4. They go to the finals. The finals don't start until June 6th. He'll have not played at all in the playoffs. Any concern there for you about like having to reintroduce Porzingis Game 1, presumably against Dallas is where we're headed? I mean, any concern about that for you on the Boston side, and what do you think that could look like? And would you, if you were Boston, would you have liked him to maybe be able to come back for a game at some point and just gotten him 15 minutes just to get the rust off a little bit?
Yeah, we should say he did play the first 3.5 games against Miami.
You're right.
So,
my brain just fried.
But I mean, again, like we were talking about with their path here, those games, he wasn't great. They weren't really tested. I think so. To me, a lot of that is the same question we're going to have about everybody on this team. To go down to the wire twice with the Pacers and still be playing with your food like this, that's the conversation we've all been talking in circles with Boston for weeks now. We're really 10 years with this core. But to me, the thing that I would be most worried about is just him physically, not re-injury or anything, but him trusting it, I think we could easily see like a bad Game 1 of the finals from him just because he, shooting threes, spacing the floor, that provides a lot of value. Horford's really inconsistent. They don't, Kornet's not, he's injured, but he wasn't really playable before that. But really, to me, Porzingis, like, you want his rim protection. You want him to stand his ground and be that last line of defense, and you want him to post up sometimes and either score or be a hub as a playmaker out of those spots, and that all does require some banging around. So, assuming it's Dallas, it's Daniel Gafford, it's Luka barreling toward you at full strength and full speed like that. Dallas is a very physical team. You're gonna have to be hanging in there, and I don't want a jittery version of Porzingis.
It's the only team, Brendan, that has double-digit alley-oops in the playoffs.
Yeah, there you go. Real quick though, on the conference finals, we had 2-3-0 series in last year's conference finals as well. Do you think we're going to a Game 7 again in one of these, like we did last year?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Would the one it would be, and obviously you would think it would be Minnesota. Could you just imagine like Indiana like takes it to 7 and it's like Game 7?
I very much can actually, which is part of the problem with all this here for Boston. Yeah, I can 100% imagine it.
Do you remember that guy with like after the Cavs? The guy that had the doubt tattoo on his forearm after the Cavs won, and he just looked like apoplectic. And after the Cavs won, I think Game 2, and he just had that guy. I need like a camera on that guy for Game 7 if that were to happen.
I mean, Pacers just won a Game 7. They've been tested more than Boston has. I don't know. We'll see.
I was gonna say something about ratings, but I don't need to do that. All right, let's talk about Mike Brown. So, Brennan, the Kings are Kingston is what I want to say. Is what it feels like to me. Is that what it feels like to you? Before we explain what's maybe going on here.
Well, yeah. I mean, explaining what is going on here is pretty easy. They're not going to give him an extension. There's a gulf on a deal. They've basically stopped talking about an extension, And Brown is now a lame duck going into his final season of his coaching contract in Sacramento, 1 year after leading them to their first playoff appearance in who knows how long. And they made the play-in this year. They weren't dramatically worse, I don't think. And so they might screw up one of the only things they've gotten right in a very long time if they were to let this situation get even worse and potentially lose Mike Brown.
The issues with this team were not about the job he's done as a head coach. They're just not. Like it's about the roster. It's about the fact that they couldn't really add anything. It's like their big move last year was like where he brought back Harrison Barnes. I think all of us were screaming from the rooftops that it wasn't good enough. Kuzma would have been a better thing for them. Something's trying to be more aggressive. Jeremy Grant or something like would have been better. Maybe those things weren't available to them.
Okay, but here's the thing is, I don't even know if I fully agree that those would have really helped them. But shouldn't that also be a point in Brown's favor?
Yeah,
where
it's my point. That's my point.
So even if they to me, what's the problem is their star big man
can't defend.
Is incredibly limited as a player. And they gave him, and like the thing you didn't mention about their last offseason is they had no issues locking themselves into that problem for the foreseeable future at a really, really high price tag. And that's fine. I get it. You're the Kings. You can't piss off Domantas Sabonis after he resuscitates your franchise, just like Mike Brown helped do. But I don't want to put it all on Sabonis. Obviously, like Kuzma or Grant could have given them a little bit more juice. Maybe there's moves on the margins they could have made that were bigger than Chris Duarte or whatever.
Keon Ellis.
I mean, he was good. That was a win of a move.
No, but it's like when that's like the guy that's like added to your playoff rotation. It's like I understand how you lose to Zion cooking you in the play-in. You know what I mean? It's like,
yeah, and so it's just the reason I pointed out disagreed with your premise of the offseason thing is why were there expectations that they should have gotten better? Period. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where did that come from? Why? Why would they have gotten better? So to be pretty the seeding, you have to be able to do 6th grade math to understand that just because you win a similar number of games does not always mean you're the same seed, because other teams play basketball games too, and if they win more than you, you're a lower seed. Not that hard to comprehend there. Their offense wasn't quite as good, but hey, Mike Brown's a defensive coach. I don't want to make excuses for him. I think they do have some things to improve upon, but what could you really pin on him? Keegan Murray didn't take a huge leap. Maybe you could pin that on him. He just got his lead assistant hired somewhere.
Yeah,
it's goofy. It just feels like wishful thinking because we really want to get further in the playoffs. We should. Well, no, that's not how it works. Just ask the Nuggets. Should they fire Michael Malone? No, nobody thinks that. No. Come on.
No. Success in the NBA is never linear. It's never is this ladder you just go up. It is nothing in life is actually that anyway. Nothing actually works like that.
Yeah.
Just it doesn't. The two things I would kind of add to this too, and I think you're right to highlight this bonus thing. I'm gonna retract some. You're more right than I am right. I think what I would add to is Mike Brown did, by all accounts, by everything we have read, heard players say over the last couple of years, analysts whomever, he changed the vibe of that organization, which is not a place that had great energy for a long time. Luke Walton era De'Aaron Fox was a miserable basketball player to watch, seemed like a miserable guy on the basketball court. That's not the guy that exists now. I think Mike Brown unlocked that. I think that organization feels like a place that players seem enthused to be a part of. Light the Beam does not exist unless Mike Brown ends up being the head coach. I know Mike Brown did come up with the idea to light the beam, but the energy that exists around Light the Beam does not exist unless you have this era of Mike Brown as your head coach. It just does not. I don't think. So you're messing. I understand you're aiming for something higher. I understand having aspirations. I think where we are in alignment here is that looking at Mike Brown and saying we don't fully think you're the solution to this. I think that's like there's other things I would be attacking much more aggressively if I'm them this summer and asking harder questions than the coach. I would also, I mean, if I'm worried about anything about the coaching staff this summer, I'm worried about losing Jordi Fernandez, who by all accounts is like the offensive guy. And I think Mike Brown probably in a candid moment would tell you that Jordi is like the guy that designed the offense, and like you're not going to lose everything just because he's gone, but like that was the offensive guy in a lot of ways, and there is going to be a brain trust loss now that he's with Brooklyn as their head coach.
Well, it feels like what we've talked about, right, with Milwaukee recently and the Suns and the Lakers, and those teams did move on from their coach, and it's like this. We've had the conversation about Milwaukee multiple times where, in theory, what they probably should have done would be to have moved on from Middleton, Lopez, or Holiday early and get a younger star in the door. But that's not how life works. Emotions matter. The vibe of, hey, we just pulled off something historic, let's keep the good times rolling, is a practical human thing that almost everybody would do. So to move on from Halliburton, have this awesome season, find this identity and this culture and everything else, it's like, well, yeah, you're not going to trade Domantas Sabonis, and I get you can't just accept mediocrity, but it's like this fake aggressiveness that always just ends up coming back to the head coach. You know what I mean? Where it's like, we want to get better. We're not content with getting back to where we have been. We want to push, but we're not really going to take a risk and do anything to get there. We're just going to say it a lot. And then we're going to fire our coach and pretend like we're making moves to get a step closer to what we want. It's like, well, I think most reasonable people, like you made the point at the beginning, none of this was Brown's fault. Does anyone think it is? Does anybody actually think it is? No.
I mean,
so it's like you and trading Sabonis, I get it. Okay. But then what are your realistic expectations? Time passing doesn't just make you a better team. So they got to actually put their money where their mouth is to make this thing better, or they're going to continue to be a laughingstock. And that sucks to hear because they were such a good story. But this has been what's gotten in the way every single time that they've had any sort of stability, is just they don't have a direction. They don't have a vision, and they can't get out of their own way.
No, I mean, look, this is the same owner, Vivek, who had the whole Mike Malone, Boogie Cousins thing, and that's where gives me the highs, where he just doesn't, I think, maybe always understand what is in front of him in terms of culture in his team. That to me will be what scares me right now.
And look, the other thing is, it's still a market that's not desirable and all that stuff, and that sucks to hear, but they were apparently in on Pascal Siakam, and Pascal Siakam picked Indianapolis.
Yeah.
Over that. Is that Mike Brown's fault either? No. So, I don't know. You gotta make a big swing, just like you did when you traded Halliburton and tried a retread like Mike Brown. Those things went really well, but just standing pat's not gonna be the difference. I saw a lot of people saying this on Twitter. If they fire Mike Brown, if this gets even worse, he'd get gobbled up in a day. That's not a guy you fire. If that's true of the coach you're firing, like Frank Vogel, Adrian Griffin, this guy's Darvin Ham, those guys have not gotten rehired. Mike Brown would. So that should tell you everything you need to know.
Yes, 100%. All right, last thing of the day. Paul George. What is his best decision? So on a Sunday, Keith Pompey, Philadelphia Inquirer, Sixers beat reporter, had a column up kind of looking ahead to free agency. In this column, he wrote, quote, according to league sources, Los Angeles was, I'm going to put emphasis on was, that's my own emphasis, wasn't willing to offer George more than the 3-year, $152.3 million extension it gave to Kawhi Leonard. However, the 34-year-old is eligible to receive a 4-year, $221 million contract. The Sixers and other suitors can offer up to a 4-year, $212 million contract. The Clippers are holding out hope that George, a Southern California native, will take less money to remain close to home. So, Brendan, I'm going to just give you my take here, and you tell me how crazy this sounds. I think Paul George, if the Clippers, in fact, are not going to just give him the 4 years and the money and all of that, if they're not going to acquiesce financially,
yeah,
unless Paul George really just wants to live in LA like the next 4 years, and obviously he can live there like most of the year anyway. I understand like being home all year sounds awesome. LA, the NBA players love LA, all that stuff.
Podcast studio.
Yeah, I was gonna make that joke, and I thought you would roast me for it, so I didn't want to make it. So god damn it.
No, I'm mostly making the joke to roast it, because I do see it out there sometimes, and it's like it's kind of just a room with some decorations. Like I think they could probably recreate that in Philadelphia. Yeah, it's just funny when I see the references, and it's like
Pat Bev Studio is probably available. You know,
half the Fox News shows are shot from these people's basements now. Like it's 2024. These guys can do a friggin' digital podcast. I think anywhere. Yeah, they don't need to be near the Wave Studios.
That's right. So here's my point. For Paul George, if the end goal here is win a championship, but let's just assume the North Star is, I want to win a championship. I want to get one ring before this is all said and done. Is the best option for him not the much weaker conference, playing with Joel Embiid, and playing with Tyrese Maxey, where they can cover up some of his offensive ball handling stuff that we know is kind of one of his limitations. There's going to be large chunks of the regular season where Embiid is out, where he gets to be the guy still. His skills will be perfectly suited to perfectly fit between those two guys, and he gets to make a lot of money still. That just feels like maybe I'm just Daryl Morey here and like trying to talk myself into this, but this just feels like if the Clippers are really not willing to give him the money he wants, Philly just seems like such a perfect fit for Paul George for this next year's career, and his goals and where he's at age-wise in his career aligns perfectly with the urgency of having Joel Embiid as your best player. I think this just makes like so much sense as a thing that could happen.
I know it's obnoxious when I do this, but I can take a little bit of a victory lap here too, right? I mean, I've been saying it. When there's smoke, there's fire with this stuff. Why did he not sign an extension until now? It's like it was supposed to happen. Kawhi said it at the podium of his own press conference that Paul was coming next, and it never happened. So the fact that we're even here means everything's on the table, right? I mean, of course you have to consider it realistically. As far as what he wants, I mean, I just didn't have on my bingo card on May 27th, 2024, that in the universe there would be more positive like vibes out in the universe that Donovan Mitchell was signing an extension than Paul George. I mean, it is like the tables have turned with if the Clippers are kind of cheaping out. That is noteworthy. Even if PG stays, like these owners get a reputation in one direction or the other, and then we kind of just like ignore when they don't follow that reputation anymore. Like when the cheap ones spend or when the not cheap ones don't spend. Like the Nuggets are a really damn expensive team. Remember when they like traded everybody away all the time? Like this stuff does flip the other way, and I think that's kind of what we're seeing. But
when Herb Simon spends, I promise I will give him credit, but I'll wait.
Oh well, he's gonna. He has a little bit of a cash cow on the WNBA side right now, so
That's
maybe
true.
maybe he's feeling good. Okay, so I don't even know if Philly has to give him a max to make this worth it. If all that's like just treat it as total money, right? The yearly almost doesn't matter right now because this is probably the last big contract he'll ever get. So if all that's on the table is 152, maybe they go up a little bit. Although I don't know about the politics with Kawhi. That's always one of those things with every team, not just this one. Which star makes more money and how much of an FU does that feel like to the one who's making less? But let's say they go up a little bit. If the Sixers are willing to give the fourth year, they don't even have to go to 212. They could go to like 190 and probably still have a massive advantage money-wise over whatever LA is going to give. So this almost feels like as long as he's interested in going to the Sixers, like I'm almost to the point where I'm like, just don't screw it up. You're going to get Paul George on your team. Like, that's how confident I feel about this. I don't think we have any reason to believe he has any particular attachment to Kawhi. I don't know about his relationship with James Harden. They just lost in the first round again. Why would he have, outside of just the roots in the area, like what other reason would he have to stay there? The basketball situation's worse. The money's going to be worse. Give him the red, white, and blue jersey. I think it's over.
I think this Philly team could just be awesome next year. And what else they could do if they could get him to come in at a little less than max and manipulate this, which I'm sure Daryl Morey would do. Like this team could be awesome. I mean, this team could be amazing. And Brendan, the other thing that came up here that that has piqued my interest, and I wonder what else could be coming with the Clippers. Is Mark Stein has his one of his weekly news dumps come out, and he said the Clippers. He said, "quote The Clippers, I'm told, should be added to the list of teams that could emerge as a suitor for potential free agent Chris Paul." He had earlier this week that the Lakers and the Spurs have been mentioned as Paul suitors, and obviously you would wonder, okay, if Chris Paul goes to the Clippers, I don't know if Russell Westbrook is going to be on the Clippers next year. I feel like
personality-wise, I don't think they hate each other or anything.
No, but it's like overlap of like
Chris and James do though, which is that's what I was like. What the hell's going on there? Yeah.
Yeah, we don't. When I read that, I had the Chris Paul like the really exaggerated laugh, and then where he and then he like stops laughing and he walks off the court. You may know a gif I'm talking about, that moment where he's like laughing and like fake laughing. Yeah, it's great stuff.
Russ, but like to me, I know Mark Stein mentioned the Russ thing. Russ was like their backup power forward last year, so I'm not as worried about the fit from that standpoint.
But my point was sort of more. I think it feels like this Clippers team is gonna like sneak. Like I think the seeds. I think you saw this more than me. I think the seeds of like a Clippers like reinvention is maybe a strong word, but like retooling is like very much on the
getting
table.
A lot worse, I think might be the phrase you're looking for.
Okay. I was trying to be kind because they're still gonna like
imploding, I think is another term you could use. If they don't have Paul George on this team next year, and you go into next season built around whatever they can salvage, plus
Harden
injured Kawhi Leonard and old James Harden, who can't really like produce every night anymore, they're going to be a below 500 team, I would think.
Oh boy. In a new. Okay. Well, I also just
the Clippers side of it, whatever.
Yeah.
Almost like I have a question on the Philly side though, and then I have another couple of teams for PG before we get out of here.
Okay.
Would you rather have Jimmy or Paul George if you were the Sixers?
PG.
Yeah, I think so because of the shooting.
The shooting.
Jimmy and Joel kind of occupy similar spaces, whereas PG could just kind of space it out.
Look, obviously injury concerns with both guys at their ages, their track record the last couple of years. I trust PG just to be a little bit more available. I like the shooting, to your point. I just love Tyrese Maxey, Brendan, and I don't want to take away from Tyrese Maxey like at all. And Jimmy, by nature of what Jimmy does, is going to eat away at Maxey a little bit, and Paul might a little bit when you need him to in the playoffs and stuff, when you need the offense to have like just another perimeter ball handler guy, but not as like inherently as Jimmy would. So I'll take Paul George, and I also just think like defensively, I want Paul's length. I want that guy.
There's also a question to me, I think, in here. Whether it's the Clippers or wherever he ends up, what does he think he is right now? Because he has gotten a lot worse with a lot of the stuff that you're talking about. Even then, we've always had some questions about Paul George as an on-ball player, even in Indiana, let alone all the other places he's played. But even since like 2021, when he kind of put that team on his back to close out against the Jazz and then pushed the Suns to 6 in the conference finals that year, he's not even that anymore. No. He is not really an on-ball offensive player at this point in his career, but does he think he is? That's an open question and would affect, even if he's getting all the money in the world in a great basketball situation, just thinking about bringing him in, I would be wondering that. Does he think he's better than Tyrese Maxey? I don't know. Like hierarchically, I get it, but he's not. So as far as what he as a creator, Maxey's better at that. Other situation worth considering, sign and trade with the Knicks.
Yeah, the Knicks, I really just generally want the Knicks to just do something this summer, and this would obviously just count as something.
Mm-hmm. I'm honestly just kind of rooting for a Butler-Tibbs reunion up there at this point. That's kind of just, as I'm like putting the puzzle pieces together in my head heading into the NBA offseason, that's just sort of where I've clicked Butler in, but Who knows? I just like it. I like another Tibbs guy in New York, and
I'm worried about Jimmy's body.
yeah, well, of course. I mean, already he's not even back with Tibbs yet, and I'm already worried about his body. So that's like a workplace hazard. Like he has to sign some additional paperwork if he's going to the Knicks.
Yeah, are we getting him to May, or is he just like it's like all right, it's March, I'm done. Like this is a wrap, you know? Like I don't know about that one.
Jimmy might be at the point where he only plays April to June. That might be the best way to handle that at this point. It's kind of what he's always wanted, I think, frankly. Like, I think he's just been telling us with his actions for many years at this point that he'd prefer to be on the spring calendar for the NBA, which doesn't really exist, but he wants it to.
Let him make his country album for a couple months and then, like, show up and play basketball.
I mean, great positive dude. I'm happy to have him around the locker room. I just don't really want him putting any more miles on until game one of the first round.
The energy of adding Jimmy Butler to that energy on the Knicks team would be like the motherfucker energy coming out of that team. They might win 50 games just on like the fuck you energy, honestly.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, people have talked about Paul George with the Magic. I don't really love that fit, and I don't think he's going to go to Orlando. Other teams, I mean, you know, the Rockets, like they're going to keep pushing that could be fun. I think they probably have some higher targets, and maybe they wouldn't be in a rush to blow up their young core for somebody if it's only a Paul George caliber player, but that would be kind of, I'll tuck that one away. People have mentioned a Thunder reunion. I just think if he's actually available, which I think we're on the same page, he definitely could be had, there's going to be more of a bidding war. He's not just going to end up in Philly, no questions asked. Because again, like, okay, I'm saying they don't have to give the max. What if another team frees up the space to offer that? And then now Philly's being pushed in a direction, and it gets kind of messy. So
can I give you a place I don't think you would go, but I just want to like ask you to see what you think about the fit without having thought about the math? This is just like a vibe check. They're probably about to lose in the Western Conference Finals. What about like a Carl for Paul George like swap out?
I don't hate it, but I also believe in Jaden McDaniels a lot, so
yeah, I'm just saying like let's double down on that strength.
Become.
Yeah, I'm just saying like let's double down on that strength.
I don't hate it. It would be Steve Ballmer likes that idea. He'd like to get something back. That would be nice.
Yeah,
even if it's Karl Towns.
It's a name.
Problem is, Karl Towns is making about the same as what he's not giving Paul George right now, so it's not really a financial money saver.
You can say he's younger, you know?
Sure. By what, like 5 years, something? No, more than that. Yeah. More than that. Towns is only like 28. Yeah.
Feels like he's just been around forever because these guys come to the league so young now. Like at some point, Brennan.
Karl Anthony Towns feels like he's been in the NBA for 15 years. I agree completely.
Yeah, but like it's at some point we're gonna like in like 10 years we're gonna like look down and we're gonna be like Cooper Flagg's 35 and we're gonna be like he's 26. And you're gonna be like what?
Yeah,
it's gonna be weird.
Yeah, Victor Wembanyama.
Luka.
Yeah, Luka. Luka's a perfect example. Luka is about to make his second conference finals. We've seen him in the playoffs and all these awesome games forever. He's like 2 years younger than I am, and I mean obviously that age kind of works that way, but it's still crazy.
He plays Overwatch like someone who's 2 years younger than you is what I would add to that as well.
Yeah. I just kind of I framed that as if there was a chance he might catch up, and he's not going to.
I mean, you don't know. If they win the title, the hookah consumption that he might partake in for like a month like could catch him up in terms of like of the lifestyle. Just a thought. But we're going to end there. Whole bunch going on in the world of the NBA. WNBA stuff left. We're overdue for a WNBA catch-up. So when Brendan and I link up next week, that's going to be on the docket, I think, for sure. But 2-3-0 conference final series. Who would have thought? Mike Brown, I guess the Kings are going to Kings, and what is best for Paul George? That is all what we talked about today on the Just Basketball Show. Check out BetMGM. Use our promo code JustBasketball to get up to $1,500 in bonus bets. Brendan and Wes Goldberg, our guy, back with you Wednesday. Wes and I with you on Friday. Until next time, this has been the Just Basketball Show for Monday, May 27th. Hope you in the States had a great Memorial Day weekend. Until next time, hope you enjoyed the hoops.